Hello and welcome to In the Spotlight with Quocirca, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Louella Fernandes, Director of Quocirca, and today I'm joined by Garrett Helmer, CMO of Vasion, and Kristin Escobar of AWS. Today we're going to be discussing the opportunities around serverless printing and the partnership between AWS and PrinterLogic. So it promises to be a great conversation. So welcome, Garrett and Kristin. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
So Garrett, maybe we could start with you. Could you introduce yourself and your role at Vasion? There's been quite a few changes recently with the brand, so it'd be great for you to share that with the audience today.
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you for hosting myself and Kristin on this podcast. We're excited about this opportunity to speak with you today. I currently run our marketing organization at Vasion, and I also look after partnerships. So we roll all of our partnerships underneath the marketing organization. We recently went through a pretty significant rebrand as a company. We've been known since 2012 as PrinterLogic, and we've delivered a highly available cloud solution that we'll talk about today. And recently, within the past couple of years, we made an acquisition of a workflow automation platform and enterprise content management solution called MaxVault. And over the past couple of years, we have rebranded that solution as Vasion, and then we took the step 2 months ago to rebrand the company as Vasion. So PrinterLogic still exists. We still have a very vast, loyal customer base using PrinterLogic, and we're going to continue to innovate on that platform. PrinterLogic is now a solution that's part of the Vasion suite of digital transformation products.
Okay, that's great. And Kristin, if you could just give us some information on your role at AWS and the relationship with PrinterLogic regarding AWS and Digital Workplace.
Sure. So again, thanks for having us. And yes, so I run the Digital Workplace segment within the AWS Partner Network. And as part of that, we started taking a look. Previously, we really focused on end user computing, which was how our users were getting their remote desktops. And PrinterLogic has been a longtime partner of ours, and in conversations with partners like PrinterLogic, now Vasion, and others, we started looking at really how do we expand the digital workplace beyond just delivering the desktop. But now with all the flexible work and changes that we're seeing, it's also about how we're managing the endpoints, how we're managing the application delivery, and collaboration. So digital workplace took all of that into consideration. It was a great opportunity for us to start working more closely with PrinterLogic in this particular segment because it really brings a full story solution to our customers. And again, securing that endpoint piece, the printer being an endpoint, PrinterLogic and Vasion is a perfect fit.
Okay, so it's great to sort of understand a bit more about AWS and the digital workplace strategy. So I'll come back to that in a bit more detail later. But maybe firstly, that the main topic of this conversation is really to focus on the opportunity around serverless printing and, really the opportunities that you've seen from working with AWS, Garrett. So maybe if you could give us an insight into perhaps what the challenges that you see around managing a traditional print infrastructure and how the PrinterLogic platform overcomes that with its approach to serverless and cloud-based printing.
You bet, Louella. Well, back in 2012, we introduced PrinterLogic as a product to do one singular thing, and that was to eliminate the print server. The print server has been this long-standing legacy bastion of technology, and it's still today in 2021, it's status quo for most organizations. Oh, I must run all of my jobs through a print server. 9 years ago, we figured out how to totally and completely eliminate print servers. And that message really resonated with a lot of customers ranging from small and medium businesses to global enterprises. And what we did was we said, hey, look, every endpoint in the world has a native printing capability on it. We can distribute the spooling and the rendering of print jobs to the end user compute devices, get that intermediary piece of architecture out of the infrastructure. Print servers are a single point of failure. They are a choke point for print traffic. Customers struggle to figure out, do I send all my jobs to a centralized print server in the data center, and then I have network bandwidth issues across the WAN, or do I distribute print servers to all of my remote sites, which is an infrastructure cost burden and maintenance burden that they have to live with. Our approach is just get rid of it and centrally manage it. So our application allowed organizations to centrally manage the deployment of printers and printer profiles and drivers out to the endpoints. And so based on who you were and where you were and the type of OS that you were working with, we would deliver the right printer to you. And so our customers saw several benefits from this architecture. One, and obviously the infrastructure cost of print servers went away. We have customers that had hundreds of print servers that after deploying our software saw an immediate ROI on infrastructure spend. Two, we saw help desk calls that were printer related drop dramatically. We had a school district in Texas that told us that 90% of their help desk calls that were previously printer related went away by deploying our software. And then the productivity of the end users goes up because they're not logging a help desk ticket. They're not waiting for IT to fix the printer issue. It just works. And then we got a third benefit that we really didn't set out to market really, but our customers kept on coming back to us and saying, you know what, the fact that I don't have to patch print servers, the fact that I don't have to maintain them, the fact that I don't have to worry about them as a security vulnerability has really increased our security posture. And I don't know if we've all been paying attention to the news lately, but the Microsoft Exchange server attacks that have been happening around the world are due to legacy infrastructure still living on premise and IT not being able to keep up. And so print servers, file servers, Exchange servers, Active Directory servers, like domain servers, they can all move to a much more secure platform. And in 2012, we said, let's eliminate this piece of infrastructure that is costly, creates help desk tickets, and is a security vulnerability. And so that was our mantra for several years. In 2015, we said, you know what, there's this big move to the cloud and we want to get out in front of it. So we started building on AWS and we launched our first iteration of Printer Cloud back in 2016. And today, over 95% of our new customers choose Printer, our SaaS offering, as their preferred deployment method for managing printers.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because I think, we've seen through our research is that, as you mentioned, I think there's so many challenges around the traditional print infrastructure and cost inefficiencies and, more organizations obviously shifting very quickly to the cloud for other elements of their IT environment. And print has been perhaps one of the slower elements to make that shift. So just out of interest, have you seen that shift accelerate over the course of the pandemic? Because, obviously with AWS, they've seen huge adoption over the past year because it's really been the enabler to keep businesses running over the past year. Have you seen that on the print side as well in terms of your customers accelerating their move to the cloud?
Louella, it's a really interesting question, and I'm going to give you 2 data points. Across our enterprise customer base, we saw a 500% increase in the adoption of our SaaS licenses. So the product that we built on AWS that's multi-tenanted and is truly serverless, 500% increase, not just year over year, but compared to the previous 3 years combined. And across all segments, small, medium business, commercial, enterprise, we saw over 100% increase of the adoption of our SaaS. We were well positioned for this shift. And the reason is, instead of building software, print management software that ties hand in hand with a print server, which is what a lot of print management applications do. They rely on the print server existing to function. So to get the print management, the secure release printing, the pull printing, the reporting, the majority of platforms out there have relied on a print server being in existence. Because we said in 2012, no, get rid of print servers, when we built in the cloud, we didn't have that legacy infrastructure to rely on. And so when the pandemic hit, we had large customers that had been running our application in their own data center for several years say, hey, now we don't need to be running a VPN to maintain the infrastructure. That's not efficient, or we shouldn't have to be required to come into the data center to maintain applications. We want to be able to access all of our IT from a browser securely over a public network from at home or from wherever. And so our customers took note of this and they said, look, PrinterLogic is native SaaS and it's secure and I can be on any network anywhere to maintain the print infrastructure. So if I have users that are maybe coming in on the weekend to print or coming in after hours because we're not in the office like we normally are, I can still support those users and I can support them from home. And that's why we saw such huge increases in the adoption of our SaaS licensing over the past year.
Yeah, so in terms of the relationship with AWS, because obviously you mentioned that your SaaS platform is hosted by AWS. At what point did you start working with AWS as a digital workplace partner, and sort of how did that come about? Yes,
well, as you know, AWS has grown tremendously in the last 15 years, from a disruptive cloud upstart to the de facto cloud infrastructure platform in the world. And there are thousands, tens of thousands of ISVs that build on AWS. To get to where we are with AWS, where we're an advanced tier ISV technology partner, and we're the only digital workplace competency partner that does what we do, and we're an ISV Accelerate partner, a lot of things had to happen. First, we had to get to a requisite volume of spend with AWS, and that meant we had to go get customers to use the platform. And then we had to pass a baseline technical review, which baseline sounds like it was simple. It's not simple, and Kristin can probably speak more to this than we can, but it took a lot of time for AWS to put our platform through the paces in terms of high availability, security, and all of the other requirements that they have to allow an ISV to have the status that we have with them. And so over the past year, based on the volume that we had achieved and the spend that we have with AWS and the certification testing that we had passed, we achieved these competency designations, and we're very proud to have it because it's not easy. Kristin, I don't want to speak for AWS, but one of your colleagues said that we're of all the ISVs in the world, we're in this echelon of like the top 3% in terms of the achievements that we have, and so that's something that we're quite proud of. But more importantly than the achievements is what it delivers to our customers. Our customers know that their print environment is going to be highly available. They know that it's going to be secure. And they know that there's an SLA that we inherit from AWS, where they can go worry about other things in IT and not have to stay awake at night thinking about, is the print infrastructure available?
So Kristin, I think that's a good point to segue to sort of understand a bit more about AWS's approach with the marketplace. From what I understand, the AWS marketplace is, a real kind of repository for all the products and solutions that are based on the AWS platform. But could you give a bit more sort of insight into how that works and what the digital workplace competency is as part of that?
Sure. Yeah. So yes. So absolutely. So the AWS marketplace is out there so that our ISV partners can post their solutions. So our customers that might be searching for something that expands on their cloud investments, what's available and what would most benefit what they're trying to do. But the competency piece really takes it a step higher. And as Garrett was mentioning, because we work with these partners to go through these baseline reviews that are not easy, it's really to make sure that the solution that's built as a SaaS application meets the security requirements we have, is architected along the lines so that our customers know that by us putting a stamp on it, it truly is supported and proven by AWS to be a really strong, well-architected solution. So the competency is definitely a much higher level for our partners to show what they've invested and how close that partnership is with AWS.
Okay, and so how do you actually define sort of digital workplace? Because it's quite a sort of broad concept, and I'm just curious as to what kind of partners you work with, beyond print in that space.
Sure. So initially, we started this whole thing looking at how applications are delivered to our customers from a desktop view. So Amazon Workspaces, Amazon AppStream are our own services. But we also work with partners like Citrix. We work with partners like VMware on Horizon and others and how they actually deliver that desktop to the customer. So that's one piece of it. Then the other piece is the endpoint component, which is how are the users getting to that data. There's a lot of bring your own device, bring your own license kind of things out there today. And that bring your own device is one of the cost saving efforts that enterprises are able to consume today and actually let their users use whatever device they want. But in doing so, the security pieces on that, how they're accessing that is very, very important, especially as remote. So other partners that we work with are around single sign-on, identity management. So companies like Okta, who works closely with PrinterLogic, and this is why PrinterLogic and Vasion is very unique, because they're the only ones that have that endpoint security piece around printers. So these other components around single sign-on, as they're getting to the applications, that ecosystem of partners can partner together to deliver a really compelling solution. So whether it's Amazon Workspaces with Okta single sign-on, with PrinterLogic, that solves a lot of things for our customer.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of sort of understanding the broader ecosystem around digital workplace, because the aspect of security. Maybe Garrett, you can just give a bit more insight around the topic of zero trust, because Kristin just mentioned Okta, and I think that's the multi-factor authentication model is really key to zero trust security. And as Kristin mentioned, there's more devices connecting to the network from different locations and different users. So what are your views on zero trust in the print world, and how are you potentially working with companies like Okta to help businesses better control, access from wherever they are located?
Well, the print world is lagging behind when it comes to identity and access management. And I mentioned earlier that status quo for print jobs was print servers, and it's taking a long time for the print industry to catch up to the messaging of eliminating print servers. It's also taking them a long time to catch up to the fact that customers are trying to move away from on-premise directory services like Active Directory. So today, most print servers have to run scripts and GPOs that link to Active Directory in order to get printers to users or users within groups. Just as every other application in the world is moving to a cloud service, a multi-tenanted service, identity is also moving to the cloud. And Okta is one of those identity platforms that's really making waves in the industry right now. And we 2 years ago, we built an integration with Okta, and we've had so many customers come to us and say, hey, we have a strategy to move away from on-premise Active Directory, but our print environment still required Active Directory to be in place. So we've had this hybrid. We've got applications for single sign-on and multi-factor authentication and identity management on Okta, and then we've got legacy applications that still require Active Directory. And in one of those last applications that they refer to as print servers, so they're thrilled when they found out that we had an integration with Okta. But it doesn't stop with Okta. You talk about Imprivata in the healthcare space. They do identity management for clinical side printing. There's platforms like Ping Identity, One Login, and these are all based on industry standards, SAML 2.0 and SCIM. We don't need to go into the technology, but basically it says, hey, if you add a user to your identity platform, then those user credentials and the groups that they belong to are going to flow down to all of the applications, including the print management application that you're using. And we love the integration with the likes of Okta, because it decouples just another piece of legacy infrastructure that customers are trying to figure out how to move to the cloud. And you cannot have integrations with cloud identity platforms unless your own platform is cloud native. And that's why when we started to build on AWS in 2015, we laid the foundation so that we could go out to Okta or Ping or OneLogin or Imprivata and others, and even Microsoft Azure AD. I mean, Microsoft themselves have a platform that helps customers move away from legacy Active Directory. But you can't have integrations into these platforms unless your own platform is cloud native. And that's to get back to your question about zero trust. That's what enables a user to be anywhere or on any device and still keep the IT infrastructure secure, because they're identified and through multi-factor authentication through these platforms, and it's a much more secure way of doing business, generally speaking. Not just to mention the print environment.
Yeah, and I think, I agree. I think the print industry has been slow to capitalize on that opportunity around multi-factor authentication. And, it seems that this is a great opportunity for you to work through the AWS Digital Workplace partnership to get, broad, I guess tighter integration with those partners that are offering MFA like Okta. So that's something that we'll definitely be keeping an eye on, because that's where we see the opportunities going forward in terms of creating a zero trust sort of type print environment. So
Louella, if I could, like Kristin, if I could jump in one more time here. Kristin mentioned BYOD. That's a thing. It's been in around for a long time. And when you have a customer that brings their own device, that device could be a Windows machine. It could be a Chromebook. It could be Mac. It could be a device that connects to cloud VDI. So you mentioned Citrix and VMware running in Amazon, and then Amazon Workspaces, which is their native VDI platform. But what we're talking about is IT having to deal with multiple types of operating systems, physical, virtual, and different types. Then you have IT having to deal with multiple types of printers. And then what I just mentioned around identity is that there's multiple identity platforms. So when you have a customer that says, hey, I've got a mix of Mac OS, Windows, and Chrome, and I've got 30% of my users on a virtual desktop infrastructure, and I've got 3 different printer manufacturers. Oh, and by the way, I've moved to a cloud identity platform, let's say Okta, for example. Does your print management application integrate and allow for operation with that mixed environment? And the answer has to be yes. If it's not yes, then we're missing the movement that's happening right now, not just to the cloud, but to give workplace flexibility to all users. And this is why we love working with Kristin and her team, because Citrix, VMware, Okta, these are brands that are part of her program as well. And so it just ensures that the customer has a great, secure, enterprise-grade experience, and it gives them choice. So that agnostic approach that we have gives customers choice. And you'll hear Amazon say all the time, we're customer obsessed. And that's true, they are. And part of being customer obsessed is giving them choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that your point about the vendor agnostic approach is absolutely key in today's IT environment. Like you say, there's organizations operating a multi-cloud environment, multiple identity access management solutions, plus the mixed printer fleet. So I guess the PrinterLogic platform is able to provide integration across that, heterogeneous environment. So that makes, it just shows the benefits of having this kind of broader ecosystem integration. So Kristin, in terms of the sort of digital workplace partner approach, what you sort of mentioned, it's quite very rigorous testing in terms of the certification and so on. Would you be able to share the benefits for partners in terms of when they do achieve this status, what benefits do they gain, and how does that help them perhaps access a broader customer base across different areas as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like any technology company, we have kind of your standard benefit programs, whether we do go-to-market development funds and things like that. But some of the benefits that I honestly think are a little bit bigger than that in the long run are we have, for example, in Digital Workplace, we have a specialized sales force that focuses on delivering desktop solutions. And so because of that, making sure that we're bringing to them partners like Vasion is really beneficial, because they're going to that customer not to just sell a point solution. That's not what it's about. It's about helping really solve their problem long term and what that bigger picture looks like. So having these partners that have gone through competency gives them a scope of partners that they really can trust and then bring forward. So I think that selling component is one. Another is we, on top of having our technology partners that are competency, we also have a ton of consulting partners. So the SI consulting partners who actually go in and do the work and work on that customer site and knows what that customer pain points are. And bringing those two together, so our consulting partners know and are close to our ISV technology partners as they build a practice around the solution, really opens up the doors for partners on both sides, right, to really grow their business and expand in this area.
Yeah, so Garrett, could you maybe give an example of where that's sort of worked in practice for PrinterLogic, and that the AWS Digital Workplace Partnership Program has helped you gain access to new customers?
You bet. We have a customer that came to us recently by way of AWS. It was the AWS account rep that reached out to us. There was a real estate organization. This will go right back to Zero Trust. They had multiple offices, and in those offices were printers that real estate company owned. But every real estate agent was an independent contractor bringing their own device. They were accessing their applications via Amazon Workspaces and AppStream. And this problem that this real estate company had to solve was, great, they're coming in, as a Zero Trust user, they're accessing applications via a public network through to the AWS cloud. How do we get them to print to these printers that we're providing? And being able to work across the ecosystem, and specifically here with AWS themselves, with their own product suite, and delivering what we call an off-network printing solution, allowed this organization to have BYOD independent contractors running their operating system from the cloud, print to a printer that was behind a corporate network. And this is a use case we're going to see more and more often in multiple industries. And just the partnership that we have with AWS made it easy for us to solve for that use case. And the customer was super happy with what we delivered.
So I just had a question, if we sort of go back to the kind of serverless printing and the PrinterLogic platform, and what we see, that we do a lot of research on the market, and it is such a diverse market at the moment. There's lots of different players and offering slightly different things, but it's quite a challenge to kind of show, understand what the differentiation is between some of the products in the market. So from a customer perspective, what would you say would be the top 3 things to look for in a serverless printing platform?
Number one, is it truly serverless? You have a lot of organizations that have taken their old legacy application and are spinning up dedicated servers in a hosted cloud provider's infrastructure and calling it serverless. That's not serverless. That's still a server that a customer has to manage, and it's dedicated infrastructure for that application. So really dig deep. Are they offering truly a serverless subscription service where all they have to do is log in via a browser and never have to worry about infrastructure, period? Number 2, is it agnostic across not just the printers, but does it work with any operating system, any end user compute device? Does it work with any identity platform? And the third thing is, what is their roadmap for innovation around digitization? The first step to digitally transforming is to address the infrastructure. Often we think of digital transformation as, hey, moving from paper to digital processes, and that's not untrue. But in the IT infrastructure, physical is not digital. Virtual is digital, and more advanced than virtual is truly serverless. And that's what we get from our partnership with AWS. So now what are we doing with that foundational serverless platform? As I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we're bringing out new product suites around e-forms, workflow automation, e-signature, content management, and integrations into third-party platforms that customers use to help them say, hey, like, I know my printing is going to decrease over time. Everybody knows that. But we still need to keep the lights on printers for some time. So as it decreases, as users print less, how can we help them along their journey? Can we do integrations with the printing infrastructure that provides a digital transformation experience? So for example, I walk up to a printer, and instead of printing, I want to scan a document. So I want to capture the content of that document. Well, to make it easy, I just put the piece of paper on the glass, I swipe my badge. That badge does an authentication call to the Okta Identity Cloud. It authenticates me, and guess what? It says, you're using the Vasion application on this printer. We know that you're a box customer, so we're gonna present to you your box scan folder because we've already authenticated you into Okta. And then all I have to do is either through my mobile phone interface or through the control panel on the printer, hit scan, and that piece of paper is now digitized into a cloud platform. And I didn't have any infrastructure managing that. I had no print server, I had no file server, I had no identity server on premise. And now I'm doing something that truly is digital transformation. I'm capturing content, digitizing it. And then further, I can take that, instead of just storing it straight away into a box, I can first send it to a workflow. So I could put it into a Vasion workflow, define rules and people that need to interact with that document before it actually does get stored and archived. And that's what we're doing. And so that was a long-winded way to say, what's the third thing you should look for? Look for platforms that aren't just concerned with paper, toner, and printers, but what is the next 5 years looking like for the organization? And is my print management platform going to help me along that digitization journey?
Cloud printing is very much dealing with the kind of commodity of printing at the moment. And like you say, moving that from a legacy infrastructure to a cloud infrastructure, but then beyond that, it can be a real enabler for digital transformation and the digitization that you just described. And I think there's a lot of cloud platforms that are just still very focused on the first, the print management aspect. So it's great to hear about, the PrinterLogic platform being able to expand as the organization is actually looking to evolve its business process automation as well.
As I think about our work with Vasion, and I think about digital workplace, I've been in this space for some time, and we tend to be, when you talk about transformation, modernization of applications and all these things, we sometimes tend to be the thing people forget in a way, right? They either start because they're trying to get one team quickly in a remote position, or they modernize everything else and they kind of forget about the endpoints necessarily. And I think, PrinterLogic is in that same position. Okay, yeah, we went to BYOD and, oh God, we forgot about the printers. What are we gonna do there? So I think it's really important that folks really take a look at the soup to nuts transformation they're looking to do and make sure all of these points are tracking. And because that security piece, as we see more and more companies maintaining this flexible work and trying to hit on that zero trust piece, you cannot forget the endpoints. That is going to be the biggest exposure. So just wanted to mention that as part of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, that's, a good point to raise, because, with prints, like you say, with print endpoints, there often are the forgotten parts of the IT infrastructure. And because more of us are using printers up in the home as well, there's, more potential risk and exposure there. So I guess cloud platforms have to be able to manage printing in the home and the office in that hybrid work environment. So yeah, absolutely agree with that. And in terms of the digital workplace, Kristin, so what would you say would be not only the key benefits, but how can partners really exploit that relationship? And are there any particular partners you're focused on beyond print that, are part of this ecosystem?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I mentioned a few in the beginning. Of course, we have our services, which is Amazon Workspaces and Amazon AppStream. We work closely with Citrix as well on AWS, VMware Horizon on AWS, Nutanix Frame. So customers have adopted a variety of solutions to deliver that desktop, and so we work with a ton of them. Then from the securing endpoint side and from the identity management side, we work with Okta, Ping, OneLogin, CyberArk. And then the one piece that is additional that kind of leads to the workflow components of Vasion is the collaboration piece. There's a number of collaboration tools that are expanding in this space as well. And so we've got partnerships with Monday.com, Guru, Smartsheet, those folks as well. And that brings that whole story together. So not just how are you working at home or remote, how are you securing it, but now how are you collaborating with your teammates? And so it's exciting to see where Vasion is headed, because it expands their portfolio that really expands more broadly into the digital workplace as well.
Yeah, no, it's been, I really appreciate you both taking the time to sort of explain the partnership, because I think it really sort of demonstrates how AWS and Vasion are working to expand the potential ecosystem around print and having the opportunity to work with other digital workplace vendors that, help expand the penetration of, these particular sort of, especially larger enterprise deals beyond print. And, that really set the foundation for a future digital transformation. So, thank you very much for taking the time to cover that. I just had a couple of final questions. Garrett, in terms of, you touched a bit upon it in terms of, where your company is going, but do you have any thoughts on challenges for the industry going forward? Obviously there's been a huge impact on the industry because of the pandemic and, with office closures really leading to a real kind of downturn in print volumes. And I'm just curious as to what you think is coming next for the industry, not only with cloud printing, but just in general.
And here I am. I'm sitting in our brand new headquarters. I'm in an office, and as the pandemic starts to lessen and then vaccinations start to happen, we're going to see a return to the office. Now, if I was a business that had based my success on volume of paper and toner and maintenance of printers, I might be lulled into this thought that print volumes are going to come back and therefore my business is going to continue to thrive. My advice would be, don't focus on printing, because even if everybody came back tomorrow to the office, digital transformation's happening, period. And it'll be different, right? We'll have, what we've learned over the past year is that IT has to deliver flexible workspace, period, whether we're in a pandemic or not. So printing is going to diminish over time. So if I were a business and offering managed IT services to my customers, I would focus less on consumables, printers, paper, toner. I would focus on the things that Kristin just outlined: in-user computing, identity management, zero trust. Like, help your customers build a strategy around that, because to become fully digital, you have to adopt these movements. They're not just buzzwords. They're things that are real. And start now to change your business model and find platforms that will underpin the movements that are going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years and are going to accelerate, frankly, because of what we've seen in 2020.
Yeah, so I think, like you say, it's just going to be a constant evolution of the print to digital transformation. And yeah, no, I think, that's, generally what we expect to see is that, print volumes may never return to pre-COVID levels, but there's still opportunities beyond prints in terms of, like you say, the IT services, security, and so on. So, so I think that takes us quite nicely just to the final question, which is really just a lighthearted question to ask both of you. So, it looks like, we're turning a corner with the pandemic, and lockdown measures are gradually being released. I know it's different in the US to over here in the UK, but so I just wanted to ask both of you, have you got any plans to travel anywhere in particular once it's safe to do so? So maybe you first, Garrett.
Louella, I'm a self-professed Francophile. I love the French language. I minored in it at university. I love cheese and wine. So as soon as the pandemic is over and travel restrictions are lifted, I'm going straight to France. I'll find myself in some vineyard in Bordeaux, drinking a glass of wine, eating some cheese, and hopefully speaking some French to the locals.
That's great. Well, hopefully it won't be too long before you can do that. And Kristin?
So for me, a couple of years ago, we brought my daughter to London for 7 days. And she absolutely loves it. She loves the history of everything in Europe. And so we had plans to go to Spain when the pandemic hit. So that will be our next one. We kind of, as a family, what is our next European tour to educate her on the world at large? So Spain will probably be our next one. However, I think my husband might try to golf in Ireland first. So, so wait, Louella, what about you?
So, well, my first choice is Portugal. You probably guessed from my name, Portuguese heritage. So yeah, I tend to go every year, and I'm really missing it. So I don't know when we'll be allowed to travel over in the UK, but that's definitely the first on my list. So yeah,
good.
Can't wait.
Very good. That's great.
Yeah. So well, thanks ever so much. It's been a really great conversation. I think it's really helped explain the benefits of the AWS and the PrinterLogic partnership, and the understanding of the overall ecosystem beyond print. So, I appreciate you taking the time to join me today, and look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Louella. It's been our pleasure.
So thank you for joining today's In the Spotlight with Quocirca podcast discussion with AWS and Vasion. For more information on our future podcasts, please go to quocirca.com or visit the YouTube channel. We look forward to seeing you on future podcasts, and thank you again for joining us today.